game. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect that of the HHN TV or its constituent entities. Viewer discretion is advised.
From Milrow at the start of this game. He's got to have it right now. And they take a downfield shot. And the catch is made. It's Ryan Williams. Still spinning free. Touchdown Alabama. The answer in one play. 75 yards for the 17-year-old. Are you kidding us?
Man, you want to talk about everybody being geeked up right now. I mean, seriously, Ryan Williams might be the hero of the year, depending on how things go right now for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I mean, seriously. And look, everybody's got a right to be geeked up on him. He's 17 years old, and he did what he did. Granted, he probably should have, and I'm sure everybody saw the play where it was like tipped around. Probably should have caught that one outright, right? But, you know, the defense is there. We'll give it to him. He's 17 years old. He kept his focus, never gave up on the play, ends up with the catch. Then he ends up with easily play of the game, maybe one of the greatest plays of the last decade, easily maybe play of the year. The significance behind that play is going to be everything. You know, one of the things that I talked about going into this football game was Kalen DeBoer, Alabama, needing a signature win. Because as of the moment, Alabama still belongs to Nick Saban. But even then, we saw a difference in coaching tonight. One team is up big. One team is up 21-0, 28-0, and they're rolling. But Smart never let his guys get down. He stayed involved. He stayed intense. And even down 21-0, when the players were coming to the sideline, he's high-fiving them. Everybody, keep your head up. Stay up. You got this. He was very involved with his players. Meanwhile, DeBoer is over there smirking. And look, I don't know what was said or done at halftime, whatever adjustments were made. But the reality is we still saw a better coaching job at Georgia tonight than we did at Alabama. Ryan Williams made some phenomenal plays. And at the end of the day, Bama, the players executed on plays that really weren't there. I mean, Milrow took some chances, especially if you look at the throws for the most part that he made to Williams. There were some chances. Now, obviously, the one that he threw to Williams was on point, that he was bobbing around and tipping around. But again, he's 17 years old, and he never gave up on the play. Not once. He just stayed with it. Now, Alabama gets the win, but I think that we all look at this game realistically and go, they probably should have closed this thing out 48-0. But Georgia and their coaching staff was not having it. They made adjustments. They kept their players encouraged. They stayed involved. They never relented in that game. And because they never backed down, look, the point I'm saying here is very simple. We're going to talk about this a little bit later on with Ole Miss and Kentucky, is I've always said that eventually the players become a reflection of who their coach is. And I witnessed that on Saturday night. We saw how Smart's players never gave up. And we saw how Bama just went completely lax. I mean, when I say that Alabama still belongs to Nick Saban, there are going to be questions, I guarantee you, on Monday morning that are, hey, do you think Nick Saban would have gave up that lead? Do you think Nick Saban would have allowed that to happen, that almost comeback? Do you think that Nick Saban would have allowed Georgia to put themselves in a position to win the game? Or do you think he would have found a way to keep their foot on their neck? So while DeBoer got a signature win to this point in the season, he still has yet to even begin to tread the water of getting out of the shadow of Nick Saban. And that's just the reality of the situation, whether Bama fan likes it or not. I was honestly more impressed by Georgia tonight than I was Alabama. Because I feel like if the roles were reversed and Georgia got up like that, Bama would have never came back. you would have never seen them crawl back into that game. I firmly, and I mean this, I firmly believe that. Outcoached, outplayed, and out-hustled for the most part in the second half. Really, Ryan Williams separated himself from a lot of people in the country at age 17 and really showed how great he could potentially be. I'm not ready to get full geeked up on him yet, but the display that we just witnessed was insanity. I don't know if I have the necessary descriptive powers to put in what we just saw. Because that was incredible. Tiptoeing on the sideline, maintaining his balance, never letting the moment get to him. Nothing was too big. He's going to deserve a lot of credit for that win. And look, I've been talking about Ian Gold and him being gone and how Bama still has guys that could stretch the defense, but I still think that they needed to rely on the run game in order to be successful. I'm going to tell you what, when you have a receiver with that kind of capability, it's to a point where even when he's not open and he's open, and now he's going to draw so much attention, that's going to leave everything else wide open. Now the play calling is wide open if you're Kalen DeBoer, and I just felt like he really didn't take advantage of that. He really did not take advantage of that in the second half. You get lax, you get too comfortable, you stop executing the way that you should. I was more impressed by Georgia on Saturday night than I was Alabama. Alabama showed some outstanding players, and they showed that a couple of players can make a huge difference. But I just saw way more leadership from Georgia not backing down in that football game. I'm just saying. And speaking of execution and all that, damn, look, boy, Kentucky with maybe the ballsiest call to go for it on fourth down. Plenty of time left. Now in college football, you got the 2-minute timeout, whatever the hell you want to call it. You have the 2-minute. Got a couple of timeouts left. You're not exactly out of it. Your defense has played well. You take a shot down the field basically, and you completely flip it. And then on top of that, a fumble happens down in the goal line, and you guys have the wherewithal to go and get it. Look, I'm sure everybody has seen that play, that time when during that football game, literally Ole Miss is instructed by the quarterback, which came from the coach, Lane Kiffin, hey, man, get down, fake an injury. You know, I had the good fortune of interviewing Howard Schnellenberger one time. We've all seen it with Lou Holtz, et cetera. There are plenty of coaches out there that believe that when you start doing that hokey nonsense, you don't think that you can beat a team straight up. And when I say that players become who their coaches are, now that is trickled down to your players, and they start questioning themselves as well. And let's not forget that Ole Miss still had plenty of chances, even after Kentucky took the lead back, to win that game. Poor execution, bad play calling, poor decision-making. Lane Kiffin continues to reveal who he really is as a head coach. And you wonder why he got ran out of Tennessee. You wonder why it didn't work at USC. You wonder why everywhere he goes, it looks like everything is going to be okay. The Raiders, it's never worked. I don't know if it's ever going to work. And look, he's been gift-wrapped the college football playoff. Handed to him on a silver platter. Because you have the expansion now. Look, the best team and the best chance that he probably ever had was Ole Miss when they started out. What was it, 9-0 that season? And then Treadwell got hurt. I get that. Okay, your best player's out. You lose 3 in a row. Then you lose that huge bowl game, right, to TCU that season. That was a crazy year in and of itself. That was the same year that both TCU and Baylor got left out of the college football playoff. They jumped Ohio State ahead, and Ohio State ends up winning the championship. Baylor, if I remember correctly, they ended up losing to Central Florida that season. And I think people looked at TCU's win over Ole Miss as, well, they were kind of reeling anyways. They were without their best player. And when Lane Kiffin gets into a bind and you start to box him in, he doesn't seem like he's able to really figure things out, and he can't work his way out of a jam. And it trickles down to the players. I just don't know how much longer we are going to accept this man as a head coach. As a coordinator, he works out phenomenally. But as a head coach, it just never works. And when his guys are a little down and they're a little out, it just seems like at the end of games when they need him the most, again, look at the difference between what happened with Georgia and Bama. We could damn near say the exact same thing about Kentucky and Ole Miss. And I know somebody out there is going to go, well, come on, man. Kentucky gave Georgia all they wanted to and more. Look, we've got to remember something, that Stoops really just kind of seems to have Georgia's number. They're a tough team. They just can't quite pull it out, whether it's a talent issue or whatever the case may be. They don't exactly get blown out when they go against Georgia. But if you ask me, Stoops and Lane Kiffin are pretty much basically the same coach with, at the end of the day, the exact same results for the most part. This was, to me, Lane Kiffin's season to where he could finally okay, if I lose a couple of games, I could probably still get in. But if he gets in, does it look like he's going to really do any better? Look, I've said that I don't think any team from the Big 12 is going to win a college football playoff game. They're certainly not going to make it past the second round. But if they see a team like Ole Miss, a K-State or somebody like that, they might have a legitimate chance. Just because I think they would be able to outcoach Lane Kiffin in these situations. Going forward, this is a stamp on what Ole Miss could be this season, because you look at it and you're going to go, you had the shot, man. You couldn't close the game out. You have got to finish strong. And it's not that I'm taking anything away from Stoops. It's not that I'm taking anything away from Kentucky. It's none of those things. It's just how many more times, as a fan of any of the aforementioned teams, are you going to look at Lane Kiffin and go, I really believe that with him as our coach, we have a legitimate chance. And I know the SEC is deep. I'm not, going to say that it's not. But at some point, when do you separate yourself from everybody else in the pack? Smart did it at Georgia. Nick Saban did it at Bama. Hell, even Heupel's had more success at Tennessee as of the moment. I just, at some point, you have to throw your hands up and go, how much further can we really go? I'll be honest. I think that with the team that Ole Miss has this season, this was probably a make or break year for Lane Kiffin. I don't know how much further he goes. I'm just saying. Penn State, Illinois. One of the things that I talked about was Altmaier being maybe the most improved quarterback in the nation. Up until Saturday night, he hadn't thrown an interception. He threw one that was really a game breaker. And the other thing that I talked about was the run game. And between Allen and Singleton alone, Penn State had 200 yards on the ground. Now, the reality is, and I've talked about this before, I don't care if I'm Penn State fan, or Penn State coach, that ESPN or anybody else is getting on television and going, man, those games are so boring. What do I care? I talked about Penn State needing to grind out a win, 14-10, somewhere in that neighborhood. Who gives a rat's ass if everybody's out there talking about how boring that football team is? I still don't think Drew Hour's good enough. He was efficient, but he was really what you asked him to be on Saturday, right? He was who you asked him to be. I just need you to be a game manager. I need you to not make too many mistakes. I need you to be careful with the football, and we're going to take care of this thing with defense, and we're going to go on the ground. We're going to shorten the game, and we are going to pound the living hell out of Illinois. It's exactly what they did. We control the clock. We control the line of scrimmage. We make it easier because the defensive line is tired in the fourth quarter. Now we make it easier on our offensive linemen for blocking. Now we make it easier on our quarterback because he's going to have more time in the pocket. Now we're going to make it easier on everybody because they're expecting the run, and we're going to be able to take shots deep. We're going to be able to do just enough in the passing game to win. Folks, the basics still win games. And I know people love to talk about the prolific passers and all that stuff. You go back and you look at the majority of truly great football teams, and they had some sort of balance. You know, I understand that Patrick Mahomes has kind of separated that, and I'm not saying that it's not a possibility, but at the end of the day, you've got to have something else other than just a really great passing game. You've got to either have a defense or some balance in the run game. And last year, you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, through all the fault with the passing game and how bad they were and all the drop passes, you still had a defense that was good enough to get you to where you want to go. You know, Illinois was one of my favorites going into the season for the Big Ten. So was Indiana. I still think Illinois is a good football team, but they've got some adjustments that they're going to have to make. You know, I really thought that they could have used the run game as well. They didn't do anything special, and, you know, Altmaier was pretty much well contained for the majority of that football game. You know, they were willing to give him everything underneath. They kept everything in front of him defensively, did Penn State, and they knew exactly how they wanted to and how they were going to win that game. It's a game plan that I believe that they had when I talked about it on Friday. They executed it exactly that way on Saturday, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And there's nothing wrong with winning games that way. You know, all these, you know, voters and the system and everything that they're doing, it's all BS. Right now, and I know that I'm being partially hypocritical, but, you know, maybe I do have maybe too much disdain for the Big 12. But at some point, you do have to, you know, separate yourselves. Like, this is a really big game, and we're going to win it huge. Did Penn State truly do that? Look, I'm not going to say that they did, but what I am going to say is now they know, because this is something else that I talk about. Now you know that if you absolutely have to, you can grind out a win. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with going, we need to figure out a way to just grind this bad boy out. And other teams are going to watch that film and they're going to know, hey, we got to really work on the front seven. We can maybe put 8 guys in a box and it might be sustainable for a little while, but they are patient. Patient is something that we didn't see with Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Right? You look at that football game and you could say to yourself, you've got Ollie running the football so well. Why are you changing this? Where's the patience? Why are you not staying with this? You know, I talked about me not really thinking that Bowen is that good. He had 2 interceptions in that football game. I didn't like the play calling inside the 30. They had multiple chances. They missed the field goal, turned it over on downs. You had the turnovers. They were so horrible inside the 30-yard line. To be honest with you, they should have been up on Kansas State huge in that football game. And, you know, I don't have a problem with settling for field goals. I don't take issue with that. But what I certainly do take issue with is when you just leave something that is working for you. Who cares about how many yards your quarterback is throwing? Who gives a damn about the play calling that you think is supposed to work? Sometimes you have to look at the way the game is going, feel out the game, and go, we got to change what we initially thought we were going to do. And I think that is where the biggest downfall for Gundy really is. He absolutely refuses to stick with something that is working. No, it's like this. I know it's going to work. It's supposed to work because I say it's going to work. Look, I get that as a coach, you have this feeling that whatever I draw up, as long as it's executed correctly, it is going to work. And I'm not going to say no to that 100%. But I think that if you see the way the game is going and you see that you have something working, there's nothing wrong with, okay, and I know somebody's going to go, well, come on, man. They got stuffed on this play and they got stuffed on that play. That's because they got obvious with their play calling. So obvious. I'm sticking with different types of pitch plays, different types of RPOs, counter plays, toss plays, straight up the middle. You balance out the run game in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it takes care of itself. And getting away from it early on the way that they did and just fully relying on the passing game was the biggest mistake that Oklahoma State made in that football game. Had they stuck with the run game, I think they blow out Kansas State. Now, I'll give credit to Kansas State. They end up winning that game big. I talked about them needing to separate themselves and getting a huge win. I don't think that they separated themselves enough for me to be like, okay, I think they're a championship contender, but they may have separated themselves at least in the Big 12. I know people are going to talk about BYU and what they got going on over there. I'm not completely sold on that either. Okay, obviously you got Prime. They handled business with Central Florida. Okay, that team is getting better. Shador, every game now, more and more is getting rid of the football quicker. He's rushing and scrambling around to actually get up the field now. I get that, okay? There's better things happening with Colorado that I'm still not completely sold on, but they're getting better, okay? They've still got that schedule in front of them. So we'll see what happens. All right, but Utah, how great that they look. Defensively, I think they're good, but offensively, they're too hit and miss to me to really be a true contender. Cam Rising is very injury prone. We don't know how that's going to all play out. So I'm just not sold on the Big 12, and this is why. The game plan that initially was working, you went away from, you put your team in a bad situation. I just don't think that it was a player problem. I think that it was a coaching problem. And you're really not going to change my position on that. There are more coaching problems than player problems than people want to realize when it comes down to sports. And it's just a reality. And look, I know that people say like basketball, people will tell you that that's a player's game. I'm not going to fully disagree with it, but coaching decisions still have to be made. Motivation still has to be done. You still have to get the best out of your leaders and the best out of the guys that are around them. You still have to put together a game plan that is indicative, and you still have to make changes in the game. Adjustments. There are instances where it's okay to stick with it, but when you see the game is getting out of control and you see it's not going your way, and here's the thing, if Oklahoma State did what they needed to do to begin with, that game never gets to the place that it got to. You've got a linebacker at Kansas State playing quarterback, and you just let him run roughshod all over you. Kansas State is so, for the most part, one-dimensional in their play calling. It really hasn't changed, even with Snyder being gone. It still hasn't changed much. It's still the same old, same old. And look, I know somebody's going to go, well, it's a system, it works, it's proven. It's not. It has not equated to a championship. There are holes in it. There are flaws in it. And if you as a defense cannot figure that out, and you as a coach cannot figure that out, then that is 100% on you. And you would think that Gundy's been there long enough in the Big 12 that Kansas State and their game plan would not supersede him. That games would be better and closer. If I'm Oklahoma State fan, I'm debating on whether or not it's time for Gundy to go. I'm starting to wonder to myself, how much longer can I deal with this? How much longer can I have one really good season where we go 11-2 and we were really good, and then have 3 seasons of 4 and 5 wins? How much longer can I really, truly endure this? How much longer can I watch a game of football and go, this is working? Why are we changing it? Why are we getting away from it and staying away from it? Why are we panicking already? The whole "come for me, I'm a man" speech was 20 years ago. We are way past that now. You could tell he's got issue with the NIL. You could tell that he's, there's just things about him where you're looking at him and it's just like, I don't even necessarily know if he's taking coaching seriously anymore. I think he's so about him and his lifestyle right now that he's not worried about being a coach at Oklahoma State. I think there was a time when he had a true passion. I don't know that it's there anymore. I'm just saying. And look, Joe Clapp, once again, he can stop with the Big 12 having depth. I'm not buying it. The Big 12 hasn't had depth for years. They're still not going to have depth. I'm not into that. You're not going to convince me otherwise. I don't believe that the Big 12 is all that deep. And this year is still wide open for the Big 12 right now. It really is. I don't know that you can say that it's deep. I think that it's wide open. Wide open and deep are not necessarily the same thing. I'm just saying. So top 25 polls are already out. UNLV, by the way, even with what they got going on over there, with a fairly solid win. Right now, obviously, you got Bama at 1, Texas at number 2. Arch Manning has just been, look, it's seamless going from him to Quinn Ewers. And it might even be better. I don't know that there's a reason for Quinn Ewers to come back and start except for maybe out of respect. Let's just keep it a buck. Him coming back may have blown his ride to the NFL because with what they're able to do with Manning right now, he's not a necessity anymore. When they had Murphy, it was evident that he was, still a necessity because, Murphy had some turnovers and it was pretty obvious, I think, that Manning was going to climb up the ranks over him. I think Murphy was going to end up going down to third string. That's why he decided to go ahead and take off. I don't personally blame him for the move. It is what it is. He's got plenty of work that he needs to do. But the point of what I'm saying is it was obvious, like we still need Quinn Ewers. It's not obvious right now with Manning. It's really not. Ohio State, they're in at 3. Tennessee's 4. Georgia moves down to 5. Oregon is still at 6. Seriously, what have they done? Penn State with their win, they move up to 7. Miami's at 8, which, real quick here, I hate to break it to everybody, that wasn't a catch. It should have been called a catch on the field. But it was not a catch. Sorry. How it was called a catch to begin with, I don't know. There are people out there that disagree with me. There are people out there that agree with me. What I am telling you is it shouldn't have been called one to begin with. I know Virginia Tech fan is pissed, and the conspiracy theories are already out, right? Oh, they just want to make sure that Clemson's going to be able to get in, or, Miami's going to be able to get in, blah, blah, blah. Folks, listen to me. It doesn't benefit anybody for Miami to lose a single game right now. Let's stop pretending like the CFP has not made that lax. And by the way, the conference champion of a Power 4 is still going to get in automatically. So let's everybody chill. There's no conspiracy. The reality is it shouldn't have been a catch. I think the world is divided on that, but I'm going to take it shouldn't have been one to begin with. Now, do I think that there was enough evidence to overturn it? Well, if I say no, then you're going to go ergo it's a catch. Wrong. The call on the field is what matters the most initially 99% of the time, right? So in that situation, I think you go with the initial call on the field. But the initial call on the field should have been incomplete to begin with. And then from there, it should have been reviewed anyway, because every touchdown pretty much is, right? So regardless, it still would have been looked at. You got Mizzou at number 9, Michigan at 10. Another team that almost blew a lead, USC, they came back. They were down, 21-10 to Wisconsin. If I'm USC fan, I'm glad about that win, but I don't think it's necessarily a great win. I'm concerned moving forward. Ole Miss drops all the way down to 12. LSU's at 13. Notre Dame, okay, sitting at 14. I don't know, man. That loss to Northern Illinois, I think should be stinging them a little bit more than it is, especially with their schedule and the way that it looks. I think at the beginning of the season, it was a little bit tougher than what it initially looked like, but look at what Northern Illinois has done since then. I'm just not buying it. Iowa State, BYU, Utah, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Boise State, Louisville, A&M, Indiana, Illinois, UNLV, and Texas A&M tied for the most amount of votes. So there you go. UNLV with a blowout win. In fact, it was the second most points that UNLV has scored in I don't know how long. What, they have 59, and like the most they've ever put up in a football game is 70. So, they're not. I mean, Sluka and that whole situation, he may have just done himself in, especially because there was a casino that was willing to put up the $100K and all that. And even then, do you really want to get into a casino getting involved? I mean, I tell you what, I don't know that the NCAA would allow that. And I'm not sure that they should allow that. If I'm just keeping it a buck, I don't know that should be allowed. I'm just saying. You open up that door, and it's a Pandora box that I don't think ever closes. And I mean ever. And look, Malik Williams didn't play exactly out of his mind, but he was efficient. Had a few TDs. They beat the hell out of Fresno State, did what you needed to do. He also had, 120 yards on the ground? They are not missing Sluka right now. I'm just going to tell you that straight up. Now, they got Syracuse coming up on Friday, so we'll see, because obviously it's going to be a short week. Q's, they didn't look too great to start out against Holy Cross. I know that, everybody kind of had high hopes from them when they initially saw Kyle McCord play the way that he did, but the loss to Stanford, I think, really revealed who they are. It's a very winnable game for UNLV. I'll tell you that much. But, we'll see what happens. I think UNLV may be a little too balanced for Syracuse. There's no run game over there right now at Q's. The defense is not as good to me as it has been over the last decade plus. I think this is actually a very down year for Syracuse's defense, if I'm being honest with you. I'm a huge Syracuse fan. Can never have it all at once. Can't have offense and defense. It's just like one or the other, it seems like. But it is what it is. All right, real quick here, Jalen Hurts. Look, I've been talking about this season, and I'm to a point where I'm starting to wonder, if I'm a Philadelphia fan, if it's time to move on from him. I'm just keeping it a buck. Okay? I understand that you had that great season with him, the way he played in the Super Bowl, but he still had that turnover, which pretty much changed the course of that football game. Okay? How much more can you take? By the way, he's only played one game this season so far where he didn't have a turnover. That was against Tampa Bay yesterday, and they got blown out in that football game. Now, look, I understand that play calling was kind of a thing. Okay, I'm not going to say it wasn't. They only gave Saquon on handoffs the ball 10 different times. I think he also had 2 catches. But to me, you've got to put the football in his hands more. The big run that he had at the end of the game was way too little, too late. So that didn't matter. I just think to myself that even without Brown, it's still a fairly stacked roster. You still got Goddard on tight end. You still got Saquon Barkley. You have an offensive line that isn't horrible. They're certainly not the worst in the league. They haven't been great over the years, don't get me wrong, but they're pretty improved, okay? And there's so much more balance now with that football team, or at least there should be, that you should be better than what you are right now. I think at some point we have to look at the common denominator in all of this and go, it's Jalen Hurts. Look at the way that season ended a year ago. They were 9-0, and then after that, I think they finished the year 2-6. How many more excuses can we keep making for Jalen Hurts? How many more reasons can we continuously create and say, bro, it's okay, this isn't your fault? How much longer can we do that for? I just don't see a scenario where, I know it's still early in the year, but I don't see it. I don't see a scenario where we look up at the end of this year, regardless of how Philly turns out, and we go, it's because of Jalen Hurts. I think right now that football team belongs to Saquon Barkley. You go back and even look at the first game of the season, it was clear that he bailed him out. I mean, come on, man. How many turnovers did Hurts have in that football game? 3? 2 interceptions and a fumble? In fact, he's had 4 interceptions already this season. He is turning into a turnover nightmare. And we're talking about a lot of these turnovers are inside the 30-yard line, inside the red zone. It's bad right now. And I'm talking about the opponent. You've got these great drives, and he can't finish. He's just, I don't know if he's not seeing the defense, whatever it is. Look, I'm willing to take on play calling to an extent right now when you look at the Eagles. I'm willing to take that on to an extent. But I am not willing to say that Jalen Hurts right now is without blame. I just think that it's to a place where at some point we've got to give him the responsibility. We need to stop giving him a pass. We can't take this any further. There are a lot of quarterbacks that would love to have that football team. I think if you gave Patrick Mahomes that same football team that Jalen Hurts has right now, they're not only undefeated, but they're probably blowing teams out. Look, the defense isn't the best, but they're not the worst. I'm not saying that this is 100% on him, but at some point, there's got to be some responsibility that is taken. I'm just saying. All right, everybody, I am Drew Duncan. The show is Underground Sports. We are live, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Oh, real quick here. Real quick. Look. Spike Lee jawing with Kelsey Plum to a real basketball fan shouldn't be an issue. Okay, I get what people are saying with, the Caitlin Clark thing and the fan getting removed and all of that. Spike Lee is being Spike Lee. And Spike Lee, I think, understands not how to come out of pocket. The beef between him and Reggie Miller, both of those guys look back on it now and they laugh. And you saw Kelsey Plum like, come on out here then, bro. Come on. She was willing to jaw with him. She's a basketball player. She understands the situation. She knows what's happening right now. It's the king of New York sports fans speaking because he can do it for other New York sports fans who can't do it for you. You know what I mean? He's doing what you can't do. He's, what's the word I'm looking for? Him and Jack Nicholson, they're basically given a pass because they've been doing it for so long. And they bring a lot of attention, a lot of good attention. It's the way that it is. They're ingrained. They've got a lifetime pass. It's no big deal. And if he's jawing with you, then guess what? That really means he's a fan. That's what that amounts to. Anybody who knows basketball will know this. And the fact that there are people out there that have a problem with it, I think you need to chill out, go back and revisit, and understand what is happening. If he didn't think Kelsey Plum was a great player, he wouldn't be giving her the business. I can tell you that much right now. He'll do it to Caitlin Clark. He'll do it to everybody, especially in the playoffs. That's him. And he's not a bandwagon like Drake. You understand? He's not just going to be there when the team is really good. He's going to be there all of the time. Since the moment he could have floor side tickets, he has done it. He is at every New York Knicks game. He doesn't need, really, to be honest with you, he doesn't need to introduce himself to anybody. He just walks in, shows up, and everybody knows what the hell is going to happen. This is not quantum physics, people, and this is basketball history 101 that any casual sports fan of basketball, sports fan in general, should know about this. Why is this a thing? Why are we talking about this? This does not need to be discussed. I'm just saying. All right. Now, my name is Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. The show is Underground Sports. Take a device to play Underground Sports by Drew Duncan. I am on the Hip Hop Network. Download the HHN TV app on your smart device, your iPhone, your iPad, your Droid, whatever, wherever you are there. And, of course, you can check me out on Block 50 Radio, block50radio.com, WBFR Radio, WBFR, Block 50 Radio are up and live 24/7, 365. I am on Monday and Friday Eastern Standard Time at 9 o'clock. Guys, your local programming is next. Don't you dare touch that dial.